on my side.
Welcome to the Golden Pathway Zoom seminar, where we make the connection between the seven major world religions and the teachings of the Ascended Masters. We have been doing this work for about 10 years now and have covered topics each year as different as relationships, prosperity, healing your psychology. And this year's theme is the path to inner peace. And tonight we're going to hear part two of a presentation on 9 mindsets for your soul's victory. So we hope that you heard part one with Reverend Sidney Bennett. In it, he reviewed the first 4 mindsets for your soul's victory. One was, I will get up every time I fall down. 2, I will not be afraid of pain, whether it's mine or somebody else's. 3, I am a debtor to God. He owes me nothing. And all blessings that I get are grace. And number 4, every day I am in the ultimate battle between my soul and my dweller, or my not self, or my shadow self. And only one can be the winner. And so you have to make a decision about which one will be that winner. So listen to our July replay if you want to delve more deeply into any of those. It was a very robust discussion. And we have to do our own work on the path to the ascension, but our mindsets will help us be victorious. And Reverend Sidney Bennett is going to tell us about 5 more of those tonight. And he's been a student of the Ascended Masters for over 50 years and a minister for 33. Isn't that a lot? My goodness. He lives in Montana, and with his wife Joy, he co-led a teaching center in Boston at one point, and an immigrant in Montana in another. He's been an elder and a member of the board of directors of the Church Universal and Triumphant. And he's published a couple of books called Practicing Sainthood, Walking the Path of Your Ascension. And 2 volumes of that, which includes many of his sermons. And he retired from a career in banking and lives with his wife in Bozeman, Montana. We love you, Sidney, and we're glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. You know, I was, excuse me, I was thinking about, you mentioned how many years I've been on the path and how many people I've come and go. And which are the ones that stick to it and make it, and which are the ones that fall by the wayside. And I think it comes, there's different reasons for that. Some people find the teaching and say, whoa, these aren't for me. And maybe they aren't for them. And so they move on to something else or go back to a more traditional Christianity. Others will come and get very excited about the teachings. And there's a category of people that spend their life as spiritual seekers. In other words, they don't really want to find the ultimate truth, but what they want to find is the next best thing or the next interesting thing or the next thing they can talk about. So we do get a certain number of those, and I think we've all seen those come and go. And there are the people that are serious about the path. They want to understand more, they want to do more, they're very excited. I mean, you meet some people on the first 3 months they're on the path, they think is the greatest thing on the planet, and nothing can hold them back. And that's wonderful that they feel that. But then some come to a realization that this is not just a walk in the woods. This takes work, this takes effort. That the Guru-Chela relationship requires us to do our part if we want to become like our Guru, our teacher, the Ascended Masters. And it does take work, it takes devotion, it takes service. And some people, when they see that, they think, do I really want to make the effort? It seems like a lot, and they will fade away. There's others that stick to it and go for a certain number of years, and they discover that it doesn't end. It goes on and on. And so they said, I just can't keep this up. And so then they leave. But who survives? Who are the ones that make it on the path? These are the ones that are devoted to their ascension. And Mother commented at one time that if you don't love God, you really shouldn't be here. And they're the ones that love God, and they love God more than the effort or work is required to get where they want to go. And these are the true Chelas, the starring ones that are making the work and the effort. And some people say, well, it's overwhelming. I've got all this karma, et cetera, et cetera. But the ascended masters have structured a path that is a day by day path. And they will only bring to you that which you can take for that day. It's a very balanced and fair agenda. And when you do become a Chela of the ascended masters or ascribe to be one, they will work out a plan that will lead you to your ascension, depending on your age, in this life or in your next lifetime, if you follow the steps and devote and work at it. And one of the things we need to do on this path is understand the path. Because as you know, mismatched expectations can be the downfall of many people. And when things happen, people are surprised, they're shocked, they don't understand it, etc. And you can't, as I said last time, you can't put the path of your ascension in a manual of policies and procedures. You take it day by day, and a lot of that is because we have individual karma, and obviously we have national and planetary karma as well. So these mindsets that I came up with, and they're just, they're not the end all be all for mindsets. There may be some that you need to work with and affirm, and what works for you. But the key part of this is to be careful and know the details of what you're working on, because they always say God is in the details. And so as we're looking at the details of the spiritual path, then we can understand what is required of us and what it takes and what a victory takes to win a victory. So we'll finish the last 5 today. And mindset number 5 is I will not make idols of myself or others. The 10 Commandments state, thou shalt have no other gods before me. We're familiar with that. But further on it says in Exodus, for thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. Isn't that interesting? God is a jealous God. In other words, he wants all of us. But what happens sometimes, there can be subtle forms of idolatry will creep into our world, and it's something we want to avoid. It's interesting that Mother did that book on Many Cats, Many Lives. She talked about the lifetime of Al Capone. And Al Capone, as we know, is a criminal. And what's interesting about his life stream is that in one of his other embodiments, he was a saint. So we can't be too careful to idolatrize someone that might be an embodiment as a saint and denigrate someone that's doing bad things, because we really don't know. And so we can have no other idols that we have. The biggest case of idolatry on the planet today is the idolatry for Jesus. And people want to make him a perfect God who is the exception rather than the rule. And it would be a shock to people if you went into a Christian church and shared with them that Jesus was a soul on the path just like us, and we're supposed to be like him. And furthermore, he had many other lifetimes before that of Jesus, including that of David. They'd be aghast, they'd be speechless. And yet Jesus walked like we walked, a human being. He got tired, he had his meals, he got annoyed with the disciples sometimes, he got angry at the Sadducees. He experienced all these things that we experience. And that's how we can relate more closely to him, because we know that he was like us before he was given the mantle of Savior. So this idolatry of Jesus, he said once, it does nobody any good. It doesn't do Jesus any good, and it doesn't do the people any good, because it puts this tremendous gap. And of course, the second part of that is they think once they believe in Jesus, they're home free. So it's pretty tragic the way the true teaching of Christianity has been misappropriated. So idolatry can come in many forms, and we can have self-idolatry. We're kind of special, aren't we? Here we are, we found the greatest teachings on the planet. We have a path we're walking that could end up in our ascension. We've got all this secret knowledge, so to speak. We're pretty special, aren't we? And of course, that can be a dangerous vibration to get into, because I remember one of the masters said once, you're all here, referring to the congregation, because you had the most need on the planet. So it's not just our pride or our attainment that's got it here, it's we had the most need. So idolatry can take, again, even forms of the messenger. Some people were idolatrous of the messenger. And then when they found out she wasn't perfect, they were also shocked. And this can't be right. She's not perfect. And of course, she wasn't perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect messenger. It's impossible. They're human beings. just like we are, but they have a mantle, and that what makes them different, and obviously a certain level of spiritual attainment. There's another thing that we can do. We can idolatrize someone that's very close to us. We can idolatrize a husband, a wife, a child, and we make them more important than God. And we cannot do that because that is idolatry. It doesn't mean you love them any less, but what it means is God must be always the hierarchy up there. And when you have that perspective, then you take a position of humility when you come before God and before others, the people that have the presence of God within them. And so idolatry can be no part of that. There's also another way that we can create an idol. Before I say that, I want to say one other thing, and that is idols are always torn down. So if people idolatrize somebody, at some point they're going to flip, and they'll turn against them. And we've seen that, with celebrities, we've seen that with politicians and so forth, and they'll suddenly turn against them. So there's a flip side of idolatry, of course, is hate. And so a lot of times that will happen, where they'll get disenfranchised or unhappy with someone, and that will turn to that. But there's one other thing here that perhaps you might not think of in terms of idolatry. If we have a situation where someone has done something really terrible to us, I mean, really bad, and this happens, and we'll talk about forgiveness in a few minutes, but this one is a little different. And we are so upset with this person that we cannot stop thinking about them. We think about them all the time, what they did to us, the crime they did, the injustice of it, and so forth. And so what we do, in essence, is we make this person a god in our lives. We're placing them up on a pedestal because we give them so much of our attention and so much of our words and thoughts and everything, and energy, I might add too, that we in essence make them a god in our lives, and because we give them so much power over us. So think about that. Who you want to have as the God in your life and who you don't want to have as a God in your life. So very balanced, down to earth, professional people. Mother had a mantle, we respect and honor that, but she made mistakes. The ascended masters, when they're in embodiment, made mistakes. So we really can't be idolaters of ourselves or others. I had a situation once at a teaching center. I was there visiting it, and we're having a prayer circle. There was about 10 people in the circle. And I was sitting next to this young lady, or middle-aged lady, and she had some kind of health problem. I can't remember whether she had a brace and so forth, but you could see it in her face that she had some challenges from a health point of view, whatever it was, hereditary, so forth. But anyway, so we started to make calls for whatever subject we were doing on, and we were all making them out loud, of course. And I could hear what this lady next to me was saying. And after going along a little while, I stopped making my calls. I was absolutely astonished at the precision, the purity, and the power of this woman's calls. And if you looked at her, you might make a judgment upon her. Well, she's not capable of that. I was humbled by that. I really was. And so you have to be very careful who you make your idol and who you don't. And let's hope we don't make anybody an idol. But it's very important to remember that we idolize no one. We honor the light in everybody, but we're all chelas on the path. And the ascended masters don't want us to idolatrize them either. They want us to respect their mantle and their teaching and what they're doing, but they want us to walk in the dignity of our Christ self and respect them in their Christ self. So, number 5, I will not make an idol of myself or others. Any comments? Okay, if I get to my right page here, we'll move on. Mindset number 6. I will expect tests and initiations every day of my life until I ascend. You might as well get used to it because this path is forever. The masters have tests and initiations. So this is a way of life for us. And it's an exciting way of life because what I always love when tests and initiations come, I don't think of necessarily at the time, but the fact God's paying attention to me. Can you imagine anything worse than God ignoring us or the masters ignoring us and not bothering with us? Sometimes we get overwhelmed with our tests, initiations, because they come fast and furious sometimes, but they're all part of the process. And this process is all to develop mastery. And we develop mastery so that God can give us a greater light and a greater energy, and know we won't misuse it or lose it in harmony or other things. It's also to build up our causal bodies. It's also to balance our karma. And God brings us circumstances to balance our karma in exactly the way it needs to happen. And sometimes, they talk about the perfect storm. I think we've all had the experience where our karma has come together in a way that is a perfect storm for us. We've got multiple things happening at the same time. So it takes balance to walk this path, especially if you're going to do it for many embodiments, the rest of this embodiment. And it takes an understanding that this is part of the equation of what life is all about. And you see people in the world achieving great things and working very hard. And so for the greatest prize, which is the prize of our ascension, of course we want to be doing that. I just want to clarify one point here between tests and initiations. Tests are things we get every day of our lives. Am I going to get up this morning? That's a test, isn't it? I'm going to make my bed. That's another test. And then we have tests that you'll come to us and throughout the day, and we know they're ones that we should pay attention to. True initiations do not come as often. They may only come every year or two. And I bet if you thought back, if you've been on the path many years, you know some of the major initiations you've had. I can certainly do that. So we get a lot of tests, we get few initiations, but clearly initiations are important. One thing I've noticed over the years is I'll recognize an initiation that's come to me, and I'll do my very best to get through it and understand what it's about. And I'll get to a certain point and I'll say, okay, Maitreya, I get it. I understand what this test was, initiation. I know what I have to do, or I think I've done it, and I'm ready to move on. Can we just wrap this up? But what I found is that Maitreya doesn't always agree with my assessment of the initiation. And the reason for that is multiple, but one of the reasons is the masters work so hard to get us in a certain dynamic, in a certain situation with certain people. I mean, they have to bring all the pieces together, and they want to get the most of it they can, the most of it for you. And the analogy I like to use is, you remember the old style washing machines, which was a big barrel on the bottom, which turned around. And then there was a thing at the top where you put the clothes through it and squeezed out the water. And sometimes I feel like initiations get to the point where Maitreya is putting me in the ringer and just squeezing out that last bit of substance that's in there, even though I've told them before that I'm done. I passed, I'm done with this test. So, it's not over till it's over. So again, it goes back to, we have to have a certain mindset and perspective, or we're going to just throw in the towel. God, I've been serving you for X number of years. I've done my decrees. I've gone to services. I'm a good Sheila, and now look what you brought on me, So I think we've all felt that way sometimes, but these initiations and tests are rewards, and we are getting something that is priceless. What we are getting is the means and the mode to put on our Christhood, the means to balance our karma in the most effective and the most accelerated way. And we have the violet flame, of course, to mitigate, so some of these initiations perhaps won't be as strenuous as they might be. So we can't lose that perspective of what, we've got the secret of eternal youth here, which is our ascension. If we will remember who we are and remember each day what it takes. Some days are just days to endure. We just got to get through this day and you do the best. Other days are days to work and to strive and to really work on something and to do your spiritual work and your spiritual reading to try and understand what you're going through. Because there's always an answer, I find, in a pearl or something I'll read that will help me know where I am and know what I need to do. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but at least it's a step forward, because we don't want to throw up our hands and say, is this ever going to end? Because no, it's not going to end. It doesn't mean we can't be happy, we can't be joyous. What it does mean is we're working for the greatest goal on this planet, and that is our ascension and beyond. So, Linda, do you have a question?
Yes. Can you give us a good definition of a difference between a test and an initiation?
Well, tests can be, sometimes I find a test, I'm describing something to somebody, and I'll think, now, is that 100% accurate? Because the masters want us to tell the truth all the times, even the little things. So did what I conveyed, was it really accurate? Do I have to go back and correct it? I mean, that's a trivial thing in some ways, but they can be that small, or it can be, being courteous to someone, or it can be giving of your heart. It could be just the day-to-day living is made up of tests, how we live our lives and who we interact with. Initiations are major events in the life of our chelaship, because what they represent is the opportunity for a greater increment of light to be released to us if we pass that test. And so these are not small things, initiations, and that's why we need to recognize them. I had the major initiation in my life took place right at the end of the shelter cycle. And after this initiation happened, I heard a voice in my head that said, 10 years. This is going to take 10 years to process. And it did. So initiations are very major, very major. And if you can recognize, I mean, a lot of times the intricacy or what is required of you to come up higher, significantly higher, and how you should position yourself as a student of the Ascended Masters, your interaction with others, what people may do to you. I mean, I think we can recognize those. And I know the Masters have said they may come every year or two, and then of course there are the major ones. But initiations are an opportunity to garner greater light in your causal body and a greater mastery. And that's why we need to pay attention to them. Did that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
One of the things that will help us in terms of dealing with our day-to-day tests is work on our psychology. This is a broken record, but it's a broken record because we have to do it. And so as long as we're vulnerable to we have points of vulnerability in our psychology, it makes it harder to pass the day-to-day tests. If we had a difficult time growing up, if those unresolved with this or there, with other people, these are patterns in our psychology, and we need to do something about them. Make some effort, some step, because again, what are the blocks to us making us on the path? And one of those can be our psychology. If we don't make some effort to resolve our psychology, it can prevent our ascension, because it prevents us from doing the things we need to do to get there. So if you have that sense, make a prayer, write a letter to God to give you some direction to go to work with that. We've all got these problems. Mother worked on her psychology. And it gives you a freedom then, if you're not burdened down by that, to move on and to take that next step on the path. So this is the path, folks. It's a joyous path. It's a hard path. It can be a difficult path. It can be a lonely path at times when it's just you and God. You will have times when you feel, God, are you out there? Are you even hearing me? We've all gone through that, haven't we? And so we need a rhythm. We need a pattern. We need a way of living every day that will get us where we're going. And that is, it's a pattern of doing our spiritual work with our decrees every day, come what may, getting a little bit of the word every day we can, whether it's in a pearl of wisdom or a book or something, trying to manifest these teaching interactions with others, and spending time with God. Sometimes we will spend so much time in decrees that we don't spend enough time with God. So find a time in each day when you can have that quiet time and it's just you and God in your prayers and supplication. That will strengthen you and give you a lot of the help you need to keep on. So yes, this path has tests every day, and we're not going on vacation from the path. We can have vacations and keep balance in our lives, but this is a lifetime commitment, because it's a lifetime reward. It's an eternal reward. And after 54 years on this path, I can tell you there's nothing else to do on this planet. It's all Maya, it's all illusion. And it's a small price that we have to pay to make it. Well, I better get moving here. Okay. Mindset number 7. Every day I will work to surrender more than I did before. Surrender. That sounds like a scary word, doesn't it? Am I going to have to give something up? You know, surrender comes when we give ourselves to God. What else do we have to do? You know, we keeping things close to our vest, you know, and I think that surrender is a concept that's hard for some people, but if there's a comfort, it's not something you do all at once. We surrender in increments. And what we're surrendering is our human consciousness and those things in our world that aren't real, our dwelling on the threshold, our karma, and those patterns that keep us from being a greater example of the Christ. Irene, did you have a question? Irene? She's got her hand up. Maybe that was an accident.
No, here I am. Okay. So, Sid, I'm just wondering if you've ever heard of somebody having an initiation that was so intense, you felt like you couldn't get through it. And then I thought, oh, this is going to last for years. I'll never get over it. And then all of a sudden, it was like God stepped through the veil, and all of a sudden, the whole thing lifted. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, oh my gosh.
Well, you must have passed the test.
Well, I couldn't have done it without God coming through like that. And it was God.
That's Irene, you bring that up. You know, God is not a tyrant. You know, some people are afraid of God. What's God going to ask me to do? Do I have to give up something? God loves us intensely, but he sees us down here and we're all, you know, we're involved with ourselves, you know, our karma, our ego, our dwelling on the threshold, all these things keep us from him. And so he wants us to be free. And so he will bring us these tests as hard as they are. But when we pass them, you know, it's the joy, you know. Mother Mary said, I would not pass your test for you because I want you to have the incredible joy that comes with your victory. And, you know, we have that ultimately with our ascension, but we also have it with some of the little ones. And I'm kind of hesitant to tell a story here because of the time. I guess that we don't have time to do that. But anyway, surrendering is not only a nice thing to do, it's essential. Mother Mary says, and when you give something to God, when you surrender to God, God will give you back that which he wants you to have. So in other words, what can I surrender this day? And remember, you can't do it all at once. It's just, and Moria says, not possible. So, which is probably good. So just surrender. When we first found the teachings, there might have been some behavioral or lifestyle things that we found out that weren't part of the Ascended Master's teachings. And we gave those up, and those weren't any kind of big deal. Maybe they were harder for others, but once you give them up, you don't think about them anymore and they're gone. And so that becomes true with other things as well. When you surrender, you make yourself vulnerable to God. And some people are afraid to do that. It's the same principle as embracing the will of God. People that say, not my will, but thine be done, they're holding back a little bit because they're not quite sure what God's will is going to bring for them, because they haven't reached that point of trust and faith and knowing that it's good. So it's a similar thing with surrender. If I surrender this God, you know, what will I have? What will I have left? And maybe it's surrendering a career or, you know, who knows what it is, but things that we're attached to. Because we can't, again, this is a little bit like idolatry. We can't have any person or anything in our world that has a higher rank than God, so to speak. So you make yourself vulnerable. But Mother Mary gives us some pretty clear instructions on that. She says, let go of everything. Give everything to God and understand that it's like carrying your dirty wash to the laundromat. Don't you love it? You put it in and it comes out clean. You give to God everything that you are, and he gives you back to you everything cleaned, and purified. It puts surrender in a little bit different perspective, doesn't it? Most people in the world take things to themselves. There are the very few that then want to give everything they have to others. And this is what the Ascended Masters have. I think one of the masters, I think it was Nada, said once, I send you my love because I've given everything else away. And so what are we saving? What are we holding on to? Excuse me. Surrender is release. It's freedom. And you think about that. Well, how is surrender freedom? Because you're letting go of those things that hold you back. I love this one quote from Archetype Charities. He said, God surrenders to you the universe as you surrender to him the minutest part of yourself. Isn't that beautiful? As we're walking on this path and we're having these tests and these initiations come to us, we can't hold on to these things because God wants us to be free and to let go of these things. And so the more we can surrender to God, the freer we can feel, the greater light that God can give us. And again, this is a tool for the path. It's a mindset for the path. We can't hold anything back from God. If you want to hold back some things, okay, but give something to God that you can give right now and ask God to help you to get to the point where you can give it all. You know, some years ago, I decided I got to be serious about the will of God. And so I started saying a prayer every morning and every night. I do it twice a day, not for God, but for me. And that is, God, you know, you have given me free will. By my free will that you have given me, I want to give that back to you, and I want your will in return. And it's a recognition of the will of God as being the fastest, most effective route to our ascension and to happiness. This is not just about drudgery on the path that comes sometimes. It's about the ultimate happiness and happiness day to day. I mean, I look around in the world, and I think you do too. What else is there to do? I mean, you know, we've done it all on this planet. We've been in so many embodiments, some say up to 100,000. We've done every single thing there is to do on this planet. We've committed every crime there is committed. You know, we've done all these things. Do you want to keep this on for another 10,000 years? No. So surrender is one piece of the puzzle. And it is a liberating feeling. Perhaps some of you are familiar with the Surrender Rosary. The Surrender Rosary, when I find I get to a spot where I'm just out of ideas, I've written my letters to God, I've made calls myself, I've asked other people to pray for me, and I just don't know what else to do. So I get out this Surrender Rosary, and if you haven't done one for a while, it's very powerful. And I find it very liberating. What happens is when I give the Surrender Rosary, the problems haven't gone away, at least not then. They're still there. But I feel a release. Why do I feel a release? Because I've given these issues to God. I've surrendered them to God. We can't make it on this path without surrender. And the ultimate surrender, which is, you know, of our dwelling of this threshold and those parts of ourselves that aren't real. Because we have a lot of parts of real, and some of our parts, our personality, you know, we kind of like them. You know, they're not all bad. But we have to become zero so that God can become the all in us. And you look at El Morya and you look at Mother Mary or Saint Germain, they're very individual people. They haven't lost their identity. What they've lost is their humanness and their things that are not real. So surrender can be a liberating feeling for you when you're feeling blocks and don't know where to go. I love sometimes when I'm praying at the end of the day, just to try and think of everything in the day and take it up in a package and, here, God, you take it. You know, I just, you know, I'm done. You know, just letting go and letting God. And that's a tremendous feeling.
Sid, Jewel wants to know if you can rephrase the number 6 again.
Sure. I will expect initiations and tests every day of my life until my ascension. Okay, number 7. Every day I'll work to surrender more than I did before. Mindset number 8. I will forgive everyone and everything. Sounds easy, doesn't it? I will forgive everyone and everything. And some things are easy to forgive, but other things not so easy. Jesus admonished us to forgive 70 times 7. And I don't think there's a religion in the world that doesn't preach forgiveness, how important it is. Let's see. Forgiveness also is liberating. There was an interesting teaching I read in the book. What's the name of the book? Can't remember the name of the book now. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. Where the teaching was that a person can lose their ascension from not forgiving one person. Let me say that again. A person can lose their ascension for not forgiving one person. That's pretty staggering, isn't it? I think this idea of forgiveness can be very difficult because there is truly some heinous crimes that have committed against people, against children, that are extremely hard to forgive. And we understand that, and God understands that. If we can gather the understanding that when we forgive someone, we're not forgiving what they did, we're forgiving the soul. Because God will deal with them with the action they took. Judgment is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. So we don't have to worry about that person being repaid or learning their lessons and so forth. But we have to forgive their soul, because if we don't forgive the soul, we are tied to them. And when you're tied to someone, that tie will carry over lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And you'll meet them again, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So it's very much in the self-interest to forgive someone. And again, I'm not making light of some of the things that people have dealt with in their lives. I mean, I've heard some of them, and they are extremely painful and extremely difficult and just unthinkable in some ways. But if we can get to the point, in fact, Moria gave an interesting teaching on this. He said, if you really want to be free of this and do something about this, you forgive the soul for what the person did, and then you make dweller calls on the person themselves and on the behavior in them, and that will cut them free to a certain extent. Hopefully they come to recognition of what they did. So we're not excusing the act. This is an important point here. We're not excusing the act. God will not excuse the act, and there's going to be a recompense for that act. But we can't get so caught up in the action that we don't forgive that person, because it can prevent us our ascension. And if we don't make our ascension, we're just going to come right back and see that person one more time until we do reach that point of forgiveness. And I think I'm going to go a little sideways here for a second, because I think it brings up a point about tests and initiations, and that can apply to forgiveness as well. Many of us have had initiations that we have a record of failure on. In other words, we failed this initiation not once, not twice, but it could be hundreds of times, because that initiation keeps coming back to us until we pass it. And if we don't pass it, it comes back again. And unfortunately, we develop a momentum of failing on that initiation. So all the more matter to think if one's coming up in this lifetime that you're facing initiation, that it could be one you've failed many times before. So that's why we want to keep on keeping on, because we don't want to keep coming back and doing this over and over again. It really does get old. And it's the same, you can apply the same logic to forgiveness, in the sense that if we don't forgive someone, we're going to be tied to them. And Carol, I'll get to you in just a second. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chiron teachings, but the Chiron teachings are the story of the fallen ones, the false hierarchy imposters of ourselves that took us out of the mystery school, or false hierarchy imposters of our twin flames. They're the ones that lured us out of the mystery school and with Maitreya. Well, that's a big deal in our soul's evolution, clearly. Not only have to come to a point of forgiveness for ourselves, but we have to come to a point of forgiveness for this person. And I had an experience in this lifetime where I met this person. And at the time, I didn't recognize who she was, clearly. I didn't know. But as time got on and I got to know her, I couldn't explain what I felt about her. I was constantly trying to please her, and I just, it was irrational. And it was actually visiting a study group at the time. I thought, what's going on here? I can't figure this out. And finally, when I got back, it came to me one day that this person was the one that took me out of the mystery school. There's more to the story, but I don't want to take time to go into that. And so therefore, she was very pleasant and nice to talk to in this lifetime, but the record came up for me. And so I had to get to the point where I could forgive not only her, but forgive her action towards me. And then I had to forgive myself. It's the only way to be free, is forgiving yourself and someone else. And some people won't forgive themselves. It's a point of pride not to forgive yourselves, because God says, I'll remember your sins no more. Well, why do we remember them and keep repeating them? So I think that's something to remember. Did I lose that? Who was, Paula, was it you that wanted to ask the question? Sorry.
It was Carol.
Oh,
Me.
Carol, sorry.
Yeah. And you may have sort of answered this, but I'm wondering if your goal is to make your ascension, but there's somebody who you've had interactions with in this current life that you know has not forgiven you. And there may be misunderstandings around that. Then what should your mindset be about that person? You've forgiven that person, you've let it go, but they haven't forgiven you. So I'm just kind of wondering what happens if you make your ascension, they don't. Like, how can you work with that situation?
Well, obviously you can't control what they do. And if you made their peace with them, you can pray for them. I would certainly do dweller calls for them and anything within them that prevents them coming to a point of forgiveness. You can also write a letter to their Holy Christ selves and ask, you've forgiven, and ask for forgiveness. Excuse me. But ultimately it becomes that soul's choice. And, they would have, if you make your ascension, then they would continue to have karma with you. But we want them to be free too. And, it's we can't change other people. It's very difficult. And so we can only pray for them. And putting people in your dweller calls is probably one of the best things you can do, because it helps to liberate them, even though it helps to liberate you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kind of lost my bearing here, my place. Anybody else have any comments or anything you'd like to share while I'm muddling through this?
I'm just thankful for everything you're sharing, Sid, and it's like so many insights about our psychology and who we are day to day, and it's just so practical in terms of how helpful it is, just the things I think we all are dealing with all the time. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, we have to support each other. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have the support of other Chilas, because, they can't pass my test for me, but they can help me have perspective. And, that brings up a good point here. We don't want to pass other people's tests. So if people come to you, this is what I'm going through. It's really hard. I'm struggling, and so on and so forth. We have to be very careful that we don't suddenly step in and solve their problem for them. Doesn't mean you can't help them, but in terms of what they need to learn spiritually, or we can't get in a sympathetic vibration. Oh, you poor dear, you're having such a hard test. None of that, good, I'll support you. I'll pray for you, and pray that God will show you. But there is a tendency just to get in there and save people from their own karma. It doesn't mean you don't help them. You have to have that attunement to know when you help and when you support them in their own path. And I think, I understand what you're going through. I'm really going to support you through my decree work and prayers. And I really have confidence. God wouldn't have brought you this test, if you weren't ready for it and do it. And so we have to be very careful that we don't get in the way of God, in the way of Maitreya. I remember Mrs. Anise Booth once was counseling somebody, and I happened to walk by her. It was at a conference in the heart, so I could hear what she was saying. And gosh, I thought it sounded a little rough, And I thought, oh, that poor person, But she explained to me later that, when the fire comes down and Mother delivers an initiation or the Master delivers initiation, you have to let the soul experience it. You have to let them process. You have to let them respond to it whenever they can. That having been said, we have each other too, and we have shared experiences. I had an experience like that, So I hopefully can understand what the difference is here between sympathetically solving other people's problems or initiations and supporting them. And just knowing that someone is supporting you and your own path is very powerful. Whether it's a friend or a spouse or whoever it is, I believe in you, I trust in you, and I know you're going to do well in this path. So encouragement is welcome. And I think we all need it. If we could walk this path by ourselves, we'd be ascended now. I know I need community. I need the support of others. I need the understanding of others. Someone I can talk to that understands this crazy thing we're doing here, which is trying to walk the path of our ascension. I mean, people think we're nuts, because they don't understand this or they don't get it. And that's okay. They don't have to, but it's nice to have some people that do get it. I remember once in college, I was talking to my roommate about reincarnation, and he got this blank look on his face. He wasn't interested. And I thought, I have to find my people that are interested in this, that do want to talk about this, do want to share the joys of the path. And that's what we have. We have the joys of the path. And sometimes you forget that when things get really tough. Okay, number 9. I will keep my eyes on the prize. Some years ago, the bank I was working for in the latter part of the 90s transferred me to Reno, Nevada. They bought a bank there and they wanted a position for me in the Reno, Nevada. So my dear wife was very graciously quit her job and moved me to Reno. And I don't want to disparage Reno, but it is a gambling center. Let's put it that way. And the social vibes there were not really very high. So after we were there a while, we decided, this wasn't working out. And Moria told us it was Mother told us, Moria said it was an 8th ray initiation for us to go to Reno. But after a year, we felt this isn't working. So we were kind of discouraged one day, and we were driving off. We went out to lunch. We were talking about this. We left lunch, and we're driving. A car pulled in front of us, and the car had a bumper sticker. God's communicated a lot with me through bumper stickers, but this one was keep your eyes on the prize. And I think this is so essential and so key. If we lose the perspective of what we're doing, and that can happen when you're sick, when you're feeling pain, when you've had a major loss in your life, whether it was a job or a family member or a spouse or whatever. I mean, there can be times when you don't feel that joy. I mean, it does happen. I mean, that's part of life, whether it's a grief situation or whatever. Or it can come to the point where you work so hard, you feel like you're working hard spiritually, and still, God will pull the rug out from under you for another test or initiation. But keep your eyes on where we're going and what we're doing. As I mentioned before, we've been on this planet so long, and we've gotten comfortable. Let's face it. We've gotten comfortable with planet Earth. If we've been here, I don't know whether it's 2 million or 4 million years, I don't know what it is, but it's been a long time. We're getting kind of comfortable here, we kind of know the lay of the land, and, things are going pretty well, et cetera, et cetera. Some people don't want to leave this planet. Moria said that they don't want to ascend, they want to come back on the planet. I don't know why they'd want to do that. But it's time. It is our cycle and our time. And if we're going to apply ourselves with the diligence and the energy necessary to make our ascension, then we need to keep our eyes on that prize, that this is a very real possibility. I mean, we only have to balance 51% of our karma and do whatever, fulfill our divine plan, compared to 100% of our karma. I mean, think about this. I kind of had a vision or a thought form of standing in front of the karmic board after, every embodiment and reviewing the lifetime. What we did was right, what was wrong, and so forth. And thinking, I got to go back again. I've got to do it one more time. And, when the old days, when it was 100% of our karma, I mean, what do you think we thought after, we got to the etheric, and no matter how well we did, we're going back. Well, this is the time it's 51%. This is the time we have the violet flame. I mean, nothing could be better than this equation that we're dealing with on planet Earth for the chelas of the Ascended Master. It's been tens of thousands of years since we've had this opportunity, this equation, in a country where they don't put us in jail because we think differently or pray differently. It's on the table. It's a banquet before us. All we have to do is partake of it. And that is a day-to-day work and service, a routine, if you will, a spiritual routine that you get into that will take you step by step, year by year, that will bring you initiations, that will bring you the tests that you can pass and move on. We don't want to just pass with 51%. We want to pass with flying colors. 100%. Manella said our goal should be 100% of our karma. Well, maybe we can make it, maybe we can't. I don't know. But that should be our goal. We need to return to God with honors, not honoring ourselves, but honoring our gurus and our teachers who have laid down their lives for us. That's what the messengers did. That's what the Ascended Masters do. They are here giving their all. And we owe it to them in the integrity of our spiritual path, in the integrity of our Christ self, to return on them the greatest gift, which is the greatest light, the greatest karma balancing, the greatest goal, which is our ascension. So we aren't just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for the planet. Some of you, I'm sure, probably all of you, heard about that earthquake up near the northern part of Russia. It was one of the largest earthquakes on record. This thing was powerful. And the tsunami was nothing. It was 2 feet. And nobody could figure out why. And also, if you look at the fact that this earthquake was in one of the most remote places on the planet, how little damage there was from it. That's the result, I believe, of mercy and grace and our calls in the violet flame. So that's encouraging to me. It's encouraging, and it should be encouraging for you in terms of your day-to-day life and the violet flame and the meaning of what you're doing. But let's not forget the prize, and the prize is our ascension. You can do the most good for this planet by making your ascension, by putting on your Christhood. Don't give up on the possibility of walking the earth as a Christed one. We may be closer than we think. And these little tests, or what we consider little tests, accumulate and build. And then, Saint Germain said he made, 1 million right decisions, or 2 million? I can't remember. 2 million, thank you. And he made his ascension. So these are right decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. So we bring these mindsets together. We keep them, and you probably have other mindsets that are important to you that will help you too. Keep them in mind on a day-to-day basis, because what happens is our karma comes upon us. The cloud goes over the sun, okay, and you don't see as clearly. When we're sitting in the chapel with the messenger used to dictate and all that light, it was flooding. I mean, nothing could stop us. But when we go out and the sun goes over our I am presence for a day or two, then we're lost. So this pattern and rhythm of the daily life of a chela can mean so much to getting through those tough spots, through getting through the dark night of the soul. We don't have to fear these things because God has given us the tools, and if we utilize them, we can get through them. Joseph Janito was a dear friend of mine. Some of you may have known him. Very high soul. And I asked him one day about the dark night of the spirit, actually. He said, briefly, I did feel that I was cut off from my I am presence, but I was too busy to notice. So, it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. As we accumulate more light, more joy, more momentum on the path and the service, the test can be passed. What man has done, man can do. But we have to work at it and we have to keep our perspective. Moria has often talked about keeping our perspective, where we are, where we're at, where we're going. Mindsets play an important part of that because they can be tools that will keep us going when we need to keep going. And ultimately, one step after another, as Moria says, you get up one more time than you fall, you will make your ascension.
Thank you, Sidney.
You're welcome.
Very encouraging, very helpful to know all these mindsets and to keep them in front of our faces. And one of the things that I thought was really, you talked about the 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Russia. That is the only time since Mother has been off the platform that we have continued a service past its closing time and kept decreeing, because that earthquake happened and the tsunami was predicted. It was fabulous.
Wow.
And we don't connect the dots enough. I agree. Any other comments or questions for Sidney?
I just am so struck by, Sid, your use of the word perspective, because it made me think when I get stuck, I've got to ask myself, is there another way to look at this? You know, how would the Ascended Masters look at this? What could be going on rather than what my human mind is telling me what's going on? Is there another way to come at this?
Amen. Anyone else?
Tell us a story about surrender, but you said we didn't have time. We have 3 minutes.
Story. It's a long story. I'll save it for the next time.
I want to make a comment. I think that, you know, the will of God and the surrender part, people think surrender means you're just going to lay down, but it doesn't mean that. It means watch, and you don't know how God's going to solve your problem, but he often solves it because you're calling for that will of God. And in my human consciousness, I know I don't always know what this answer is, but that seems to really help. Is a really good call to give that will of God decree.
Excellent point. Yeah, thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Sid. I so appreciate your perspective and your just be ability to state the truth and the obvious. It's wonderful. The only thing worth doing on this planet is striving for the ascension.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we ended in a good place. Keep your eye on the prize. We cannot afford to forget why we are here. And we are here to do service and make our ascension, which is the biggest service we can do, as Sid told us. So thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Sid, for another great presentation. I hope he's gotten the chat. Thanks for both talks. It's filled with light, light, light. And we'll see you in a month. I don't even know what the date is. I've been moving and I don't know who's going to be here next month, but we will be here, and it'll be the third Sunday